I think if you're going to pick any of the land animals to partner with fish, the pig just stands out. It's that sweet, fatty. It works beautifully. If I could pick one sort of land animal to eat for the rest of my life, it would be the humble pig. The versatility and the amount of products that you get out of it is just incredible.
This is The Crackling. I'm Anthony Huckstep. Chef Colin Barker spent years at the Boathouse as one of the country's best fish cooks, but now he's in the Megalong Valley, where he's exploring land-based proteins much more, and in particular, the whole pig. From fins, scales and fish tails to nose to tail of the whole pig. Colin, how are you?
I'm good, Huck. How are you, mate?
Good, mate. You've had a pretty dramatic life change from by the sea in Sydney to regional New South Wales. What's it like?
Yeah, it's a bit of a shift, mate. Almost sort of like going back to my roots, really. Definitely enjoying it. Yeah, no complaints.
Tell us a little bit about the projects. It's an incredible project that you've been part of there at Lot 101 with the Megalong the restaurant. Tell us a bit about what you're doing.
Yeah, so Lot 101 is the entire precinct. So we've got 16 cabin accommodations across 2 properties. 10 of them are yet to be renovated. They literally sit behind the restaurant and the kitchen garden. The restaurant itself, we've converted the original homestead into a 50-seat restaurant. And we're growing as much produce and raising as much livestock as we can on the property. Like I said, we're about 1,100 acres total. We've got cattle production, lamb production, probably about 6-7 acres of veg, olive grove, berry production, probably about 2 acres of berries, and 90 fruit trees, and then a whole heap of great local suppliers and producers as well.
When you're at the Boathouse, you're reliant on suppliers giving you everything that you need. What's it like sort of growing your own produce and having the garden there? Has it changed the way you cook?
Yeah, absolutely. Takes a whole lot of planning. You know, like working with our production manager and farm manager. You know, we're looking at crops. You know, some things are planted almost 7 months in advance, and being self-sufficient. Mother Nature doesn't always play along. These extended periods of wet. We've got a very unique microclimate up there where we still have frosts up until mid-November. So, the slightest little change in weather or, at the moment, the temperatures have just snapped and we've had snow in the mountains and all of a sudden everything just goes, I don't want to grow anymore. So you got to wait for the ground to thaw out before things like that can grow. It's been an education, but it's been a fantastic learning experience as well.
Is it a different approach, when you're cooking sort of in that regional setting compared to being in the city? Do you approach sort of what you're doing differently?
Yeah, I suppose you do. I think one of the things, like when you've seen something grow from seed to plate, or you've been there for putting the ram over the ewes and then lambing, and it gives you a greater respect. You want to do better with the produce. The other thing too is just the phenomenal, there's no cold storage, in the case of fruit and veg, like things are ripening on the tree, things are ripening in the ground, and the intensity of flavour is really, really incredible. So, I'm spoiled. A lot of the work's done in the paddock before it actually gets to me.
One of the things I noticed recently that you were doing, you had all of these pigs' heads lined up. Tell us a little bit about what you've been cooking with pork there.
Yeah, so we're lucky enough to have in the next valley over, the Canimbla, got contacted by a guy that lives in the valley. He's got an extension of his farm over the back there. And they're raising a couple of heritage breeds of pig over there. These particular ones that we used the other day were a large black cross Berkshire. And, it's a pretty, I wouldn't say confronting, but getting back to what I was saying before about, having respect for the product and utilising the whole thing. You only get 2 tenderloins, you only get 2 short loins. You got to be very creative with the entire creature, and it's a real challenge as a chef, but it's great fun, and it's also for the staff. It's ever changing, so they're always engaged and having a good time.
Uh, Tell us, you talked about sort of using the whole beast. Tell us about some of the things that you've been cooking and the different cuts that you've been utilising to take advantage of that.
Yeah, well, probably the other day, the video you saw that went up, the heads and the trotters, we just boiled them down and made like a brawn type arrangement. All the trimmings from the pigs we've been making into various sort of salamis, sausages, bits and pieces like that. And then these particular pigs weren't huge. They were probably only a carcass weight of about 30 kilos, so they were sort of a little bit lean. But we hung them in the dry aging room for about 2.5, 3 weeks and really leathered that skin up, and then just been cooking like the racks and the loins and things, skin on over the open charcoal. Most amazing crackling, and then finishing them off in the wood oven. So, very simplistic. Got a great run of persimmons on at the moment, which have been pairing up beautifully with the piggies. We're just having a bit of fun, mate.
Tell us a little bit about the small goods. It's quite an art to it. Have you had some challenges or hurdles in sort of producing it, and successes you can tell us about?
Still very early days for us with that. I've got a great mate of mine is of Italian background, and his family's for the last couple of years have let me be an honorary Italian and get in there and do the family salami thing. It's really, really cool. And then probably about 18 months ago, I actually went down to someone else who's done the podcast with you. That was Ian Martin from Martin's Ridge. And just went and had a look and a chat with those guys, did one of his courses, and that was a real eye-opener. So some of the shorter-term stuff that we've done has worked out fantastic. We've had a few failures. We did buy one particular curing cabinet that had a faulty board in it, and it wasn't holding the humidity that we wanted. But once we figured that out, it's just meat, salt, time. It's been amazing. It's like I said before, it's good fun, and trying to do justice to all these different wonderful different cuts. The neck, the cheeks, all the bits and pieces.
Italians are great at utilising the whole beast, and you mentioned that you've on occasion been an honorary Italian. Take us to that day and the experience that you have. What sort of happened, and what was it like for you?
This particular guy, Anthony, he's been my long-term hunting mate for a decade now, and forever we'd go on these trips, and his dad would send little bits of pancetta or salami or whatever he'd made. And I said to Ant, mate, do you know how to make this? And he's like, no, I don't. And I said, mate, you got to keep this alive. This is fantastic. And his dad, he's always like, give this to your friend, the chef, see what he thinks. And, jars of pickled eggplant, passata and things like that. So he rang me like the Friday night, or a Friday night, and he said, look, mate, we're doing salamis tomorrow. I went, okay, cool, no worries. And we jumped in the car and we got down to a small, sort of like a 20-acre property that was owned by one of their family friends just outside of Sydney. And I'm expecting to get there, and there's a couple of sides of pork or whatever it happened to be. We get around the back, and there's these 2 cow-sized live pigs. And I went, all right. And I was the new boy, and not of Italian background. So I said, who does all the killing? How does it? And he handed me a rifle and went, it's going to be you today, mate. He goes, the old bloke that used to do it doesn't want to do it with us anymore, so you're off. So, look, I'm the honorary now, and I get an invite back every year. And look, it's an amazing food culture to be a part of. A little bit confronting first time around, being the new boy on the block. But no, very, very cool, mate. The fresh liver sandwiches were a little bit how you going the first time round. But you got to man up and be a part of it, otherwise you won't get invited back.
What did you make that day? Like, how do they utilise the whole pig?
They kept a lot of the cuts for fresh, and then the rest. So we did 2 carcasses, and like I said, they were enormous pigs. I think we ended up. They cured a few bits and pieces on the side, the guanciale and a few slabs of pancetta and things like that. But predominantly everything else got turned into salami to split up between everybody. And I think all said and done, there was probably about 120, 130 kilos worth of salami swinging a couple of days later.
That's extraordinary. I want to explore sort of what you're doing there at Megalong, and I know even at the Boathouse, you were renowned as one of Australia's best fish cooks, but terrestrial proteins ended up weaving their way into the menu somehow as well occasionally. But take us back to when you were young. Where did you grow up, and sort of what role did food play for you?
Grew up in a it was a very rural area growing up, but like with the way Sydney's growing now, it's right on the doorstep. Little town called Moralia out in the Hawkesbury. Grew up on acres. Mum and Dad are still out there. As a kid, it was guys would drive their Maxi Fergusons down to there's still only one set of shops and one street light in the town, but it's a very different vibe to what it used to be. But we had meat chooks and chooks and for eggs. Mum grew a lot of the fruit and veg that we ate as kids. Mum's a fantastic cook. Both sides of the family, grandparents were great cooks. So always really intrigued by it. Always a good eater. Always been good on the tooth. And then as I grew up, sort of a lot of fishing and a lot of sort of running around the place and blinking rabbits as a kid and things like that. And that progressed into chasing the local deer population, and that sort of translated into, and I still do it now a couple of times a year for a family friend. I go out during the depths of winter and we'll probably do 8 or 12 lambs each year. There's talk of doing a few piggies. So look, it's always been a thing. Fishing's always been a big thing for me, and that's how I ended up at the Boathouse. But like you said, the four-legged variety of food has always been a big part too.
Yeah. Tell us about the early sort of years in your career. Where did you get started, and what were the really important sort of people you worked with, sort of in the beginning part of your career?
The very beginning, I did work experience at a local golf resort, which was the best offer around at the time, and I was lucky enough to work under a bloke called John Slaughter at Riverside Oaks Golf Resort, and Slaught's I was 14 and a half, 15 at that time, and Slaught's gave me a job as a kitchen hand, and so I did a bit of food prep and weekend work, and he really nurtured me, and to this day, how many years on is that? A lot. We still talk probably 4 or 5 times a week. So he's been a huge mentor, and he's the one that really, he saw something in me, and he basically said to me one night, you need to go and see the city. You need to see what's going on. And he gave me a copy of Liam Tomlin's Bank, the cookbook, and said, I'd love to see you, in a restaurant like this one day. So I actually didn't muck around at all. I just went, basically that evening I went in and I rang Bank and said, young boy from the country wants to see city food. They said next Saturday do a trial, and the rest is history.
Well, there's an incredible alumni out of that restaurant. Do you have any stories of what it was like working with the likes of Fasnage and Justin North and obviously Liam as well?
So I came in just after the alumni had sort of gone its separate ways. Warren Turnbull, who's one of the lads, had taken over as chef de cuisine at the time. Northie had gone off and done Baccasse. Kempy had done Balzac. Fass was floating around town in a couple of other roles. I think Le Grand Bouffe was the first one of his restaurants that I had all those years ago. And then there was a heap of other fantastic guys. Steve Krasicki, Pete Shepherd, obviously Brett Graham, probably the most famous out of all of them, who I went to work for in Notting Hill a couple of years later. Fass is still a really good mate. We don't live too far around the corner from each other now. Kids are the same age. So probably the biggest thing for me was the intensity of the kitchen. So I was this sort of naive country boy, had no bloody idea why every time, Liam called an order, everyone went, we. I didn't know what it was all about. So it was just get in there, boots and all, and just, have a go. But it just blew my mind just to watch. I'd never seen a brigade like that, I'd come from a bit of a short order kitchen on a golf resort in the Hawkesbury.
What did you take from your time at Bank?
Oh, look, Bank was a fearsome kitchen at the time, and it was one of those, scream from sun up to sundown sort of arrangements. But I was really, really fortunate. Liam was very kind to me. Once I'd sort of gotten through my 3 months of silence from him, he kind of went, well, this kid's going to hang around, so I might put a bit of time into him. But just, I suppose Bank was just all about perfection at the time. You do look back on the old books and the things like that now, and you sort of go, oh, geez, I don't know if I'd do that again. But at the time, it was just, it was the pinnacle. And, we were working. It was the sort of the bad old days in the industry. We were working a lot. We weren't getting paid much. But the morale and I wouldn't change my time there for the world, It just, what it taught me, the connections that I made out of it, and the avenues that opened up for me. And still to this day, you say to people, oh, I was at Bank for 2 years, and oh, wow. So, it was a great time. It was really like being, for me, like I said, kid from a golf resort in the Hawkesbury, it was a real deep end experience, but yeah, I loved it.
You mentioned Brett Graham and the Ledbury. Tell us about that move to the UK. What sort of triggered it, and was it quite different to what you'd been used to?
The trigger for that, really, it was just one of those things. It was the rite of passage. London was where all young chefs went at the time. And obviously having connections through Warren and Colin and Justin and the like to Brett, it made advanced seating. So sort of Brett chased me actually through Woz because they're good mates. And but I'd opened Assiette with Warren in Surrey Hills, which is now Gilda's. And, was sort of said, I think you should go and see Brett, at some point. So it just happened from there. We landed in London and was meant to have a couple of weeks of sightseeing and doing all that sort of stuff. But I think 3 days in, I was on the section at the Ledbury, and that was it for quite some time.
Do you have any stories of what life was like in the kitchen at the Ledbury?
Early Ledbury days were crazy. Like we'd kick off we'd be waiting 7:30 in the morning, sitting on the doorstep, hoping for a set of keys to turn up. So because we were always in the weeds. So you'd find yourself sitting there, freezing your bum off in Notting Hill, waiting for this door to open. You'd get in, and it was just go all day. And if you were lucky, you might be out by 1:30 the next day, the next morning. Which, sheer madness, lost a ton of weight in a very quick time. And, Mum thought I'd hit the party life in London, not the working life from the photos she was getting back. But an amazing bunch of guys to work with. And, some of the guys have gone on to do phenomenal things. Isaac McHale worked with me on a garnish section, and he's now the Clove Club. But Brett I've never met a food mind like it. Just so intense, and I don't think he ever thought about anything else but food. I remember nights, and like Brett had reached some amazing heights, two Michelin stars, and best young chef UK, all of the above. But deep down, he was still very much an Aussie boy at heart, and he loved his kitchen full of Aussie boys. I think there was like 9 of us at the time, boys and girls, and but he just. He burnt the candle at both ends, and I remember some nights, we'd get a phone call from Brett's partner saying, "Oh, you look, have you seen Brett? Have you seen Brett?" And I remember going into the office one night, and he was topless. He was just in a pair of checks, and he had all these leather-bound books that he used to write his ideas in, and the office was full of them. And he was asleep, basically on the keyboard in the office, just in his clogs and his slacks. And he sort of had to give him a poke and say, "Hey, mate, it's time to go home." But he never ever, he was so intense. And it's been a long time since I've had any contact with Brett, but, I hope for his own sake he slowed down a little bit.
Tell us about your time in the UK. There's an amazing sort of nose to tail culture there with pigs. What were your experiences with pork in the kitchens you worked?
The greatest experience that I had with pork was when we'd done. So London was the tail end of the molecular gastronomy sort of arrangement, and Um, it was cool, but it never really, hit a chord with me, to say this is the food that I want to cook into the future. And the gastropub scene was really, really strong at the time and very intriguing. So I actually took a position in country England for a couple of months at a gastropub called the Old Butchers. And the chef raised his own pigs at the time. Gloucestershire old spots. They were always, various sizes and shapes, and, some would go on as suckers, and then we'd raise some out to a different size, and then we'd let some go through to curing weight. That was a real eye-opener for me. But, on top of the pork itself, like having roe deer delivered by the local gamekeeper, teal, woodcock, pheasant, things just turning up on doorsteps. It was pretty cool.
Do you remember the first time you sort of broke down a whole pig over there? Tell us about that process.
Yeah, so the whole that was with Pete at the Old Butchers, and like he'd been talking about bath chaps. I had no idea what it was, but the process of basically tongue in cheek being taken off the pig and forced into these cones and then braised, and that was the dish. So that was really, really cool. I just remember the big thing for me was I remember cutting up these pigs and looking at the colour of the meat. It was a lot darker than any pork that I'd seen before and had a beautiful intramuscular fat spread. And then when I ate it, just the intensity of flavour. There was one time that we had an excessive amount of piglets, and they got to a weight where they weren't quite small enough to do suckling pig with, but then they're a little bit small to go the other way. But literally, we just had too many of them. So Pete made the decision that we turned about 6 whole pigs, and we're probably talking about a carcass weight of 30, 35 kilos. We turned the whole lot. We put them through the mincer, and we made sausages. We ended up with a mountain of sausages. We actually got hate mail from the pork board of the UK, like, how dare you turn these beautiful heritage pigs into, it's a travesty. Man, we sold like 130 kilos of bangers in a week. They were gone. So it was, the older, any publicity is good publicity. But that's probably the greatest pork memory that I had of the UK was dealing with Pete's Gloucestershire's.
Well, particularly in the UK, the sausages is such got a long cultural significance in regards to food. Well, I mean, what does it take to make a great sausage?
It's the old fat equation, basically. Obviously good meat's a big thing. You can't just throw any old sinew into a sausage, but the better the ingredients you chuck in, obviously, the better product that you end up with at the end. And we're in our infancy at the moment at Megalong with playing with things like that. And we're really lucky we've got the tea rooms up there, which is a 60-odd, 70-year-old cafe. That we can run a lot of things like that. Like sausages will take place on our menu, but we can run them through the caff down the bottom, which is great. And James, the guy I mentioned earlier, who's doing our pigs over in the Canimbla, I think we've got 6 coming back to us next week. They'll probably be a return weight of about 25 kilos, so a bit small, a bit leaner. We'll run them through the restaurant, but he's got a couple of sows that are getting towards the end of their breeding years. We've got those earmarked, so they'll be big, huge fat coverage. We're going to turn those into all the small goods. And then he's raising out another 6 to a dozen for us at the moment that are, we're going to hope for a return weight of about 70 kilos, and that'll be a really universal weight to get the best of both worlds, those fresh cuts and the curing cuts.
You spent a lot of your career at the Boathouse and, had a real attachment to it and really made it successful as the head chef there. But I remember there was terrestrial sort of proteins weaved through the menu and also partnered with seafood. Tell us a bit about how pork featured on such a strong seafood menu.
Well, I think if you're going to pick any of the land animals to partner with fish, the pig just stands out. It's that sweet, fatty. It works beautifully. But we did a lot of things there, whether it would be making our own black pudding to run alongside things like scallops or ab. Cured pork cheek, beautiful, fantastic fatty product that worked with, and then obviously not everyone that came to the Boathouse was a seafood. As much as I wanted to have a menu that was 100% seafood, we always carried meat entree, meat main, and the pork was always a popular product on the menu. But yeah, for me, like if I could pick one sort of land animal to eat for the rest of my life, it would be the humble pig. It's just the versatility and the amount of products that you get out of it is just incredible.
Tell us a little bit about cooking pork, because you became so famous for the way that you handled fish and the steps needed to cook fish beautifully. What are the tips that you have for cooking great pork?
When it comes down to cooking pork and seafood, obviously two very, very different products, but very similar in a lot of ways to how you handle them. For me personally, salt is the pig's best friend, whether it be, obviously for curing or just for your grilling and roasting cuts. But the other thing, the Boathouse did it was never called dry aging of fish when we did it. We had the static fridge and we hung things vertically, and we gave it ample time to go through rigor, to set, and then have the skin dry out very naturally, which gives you that beautiful, particularly there's some fish species, like one of my favourites is a barcod. If you handled that right, the skin that you got on that was so similar to what you would get on a light covering of pork crackling on a small pig. So basically, now when we get our carcasses in, we have got a beautiful dry aging room up at the restaurant, but we give them 2-3 weeks on the hang, and the effect, the moisture loss in the skin, and they leather up and they dry out. Like I said, we did a dish the other night of some pork rack, and literally a couple of weeks on the hang, it was dry, crispy goodness on the outside before it even hit the heat. Scored it very, very lightly. Just a greased hand worth of salt. We didn't want too much going back and creating a fat fire on the coals. Really, really good hit of salt, and then basically a long, slow cook, fairly elevated over the open grill, and it was the most decadent crackling I think I've ever made, and no oven time at all, which you wouldn't think was possible. The traditional get your crackling is whack it in the oven really, really hot and grab it a couple of hours later, but this was done all over open fire. So it was it blew them. Like, I knew what we could do, but I had a couple of young blokes in the kitchen that had not seen something like that before, and it just sort of, I think it made them really reevaluate cooking and what they'd learned, and that you can break away from tradition when you're cooking things like that, and just come up with an amazing result.
Are you cooking different now that you're sort of cooking over fire a bit more?
Yes and no, probably. So we're not 100% over fire. We have got a beautiful big wood oven and wood burning grill, but we've got all the power and the likes as well. But what it's probably done is, I've been an outdoors sort of guy my entire life, and what it's done for me is sort of maybe brought my hobbies indoors a little bit. It's always been a big thing for me to go away camping with fam or friends and to cook a big joint of something hanging next to the fire for the day and just sort of set and forget. So that's really, for me, it's not a new experience. I'm just doing it on really flash equipment, but it's just something that I've been passionate about for a long time, but not so much on a career path, but on a social level.
Is there a cut of the pig that you have as a favourite, and is there a way that you love to cook it?
I'm a big fan of the hocks, to be honest. There's a long, slow cook, so you can do something. We had them on a couple of weeks back where we braised them for a really, really long time, twisted the bones out of them, pressed them, and then sort of reintroduced that to the wood oven later on and served it with some local persimmons and wild sorrel, things like that. But a fantastic, if you can cure them up, and you can turn them into your smoked hocks and then braise them down, make them into your terrines, whatever it happens to be, or just simple braised hock and lentils. But just get them fresh too, and throw them in like you would a great piece of roast pork. Give them a couple of days in the fridge to dry up. Hit them really, really hard. Bit of a forgotten cut, but very, very versatile.
It's an incredible project that you're part of up there in the Megalong Valley. What are you loving about the whole project?
the whole project for me is like, we've got first and foremost, we've got the most amazing setting. You look out the front of the restaurant. It's the sandstone escarpment. The Hydro Majestic literally sits above us up there in town, but we've just got the most beautiful surrounds, and the restaurant sits at the epicenter of the food production area. So out the back, we've got a couple of acres of organic vegetable production, the seedling production house, the olive grove sits over the back. Out to the front, we've got the fruit orchard, which is still in its infancy. That'll be a couple of years away before we get a great commercial harvest, but we've been really lucky to have a lot of locals, both on a commercial level and just sort of, family farms that have got old orchards and things like that, we're getting access to now. There's a great community feel, and people I'll turn up at work now and there'll just be like a box of persimmons, or someone's left some honey behind. The guy that's doing the pigs for us actually turned up the other day with 3 bee boxes. He said, mate, he goes, I think these will be great for pollination in the orchard. He said, and you'll get honey out of it too. So, we started to prove ourselves to the locals a little bit, and everyone's been really, really supportive. And, it's a great environment, and it's a beautiful place to be in. And, kitchens can be high stress, and the whole staffing and opening a restaurant for is a bit of a nightmare, but I can always grab a cup of tea and go and find a quiet tree to sit under for 5 minutes and reset and come back. So it's a beautiful place to be, mate.
It sounds absolutely extraordinary, and it's an absolute honour as always to get you on the show, mate. Please keep in touch and we'll catch up again soon.
Most definitely. Thanks very much, Huck.
This is The Crackling, a Deep in the Weeds production in partnership with PorkStar. I'm Anthony Huckstep. Stay tuned as we catch up with some of Australia's best chefs and pork producers to discover what makes Australian pork so special.